will be thrown into the Shark Tank or lion's den of investors this week? Will they survive the adventure with scratches and bruises, or give up their ambitious ideas forever? Instead of bread and games, entertainment TV offers investor money and startup ideas to excite the public. The pitching of innovative and courageous ideas by aspiring entrepreneurs has become a kind of modern circus spectacle on private broadcasting. Those for whom it is less enjoyable are the gladiators in the startup arena, the inventors and founders whose ideas are often brutally judged and crushed on the ground by the jury. At the end, they await a thumbs up or thumbs down, just like the gladiators in ancient Rome, whose life or death was determined by this small gesture from the almighty emperor. All of this appears very rushed. Faster, newer, more disruptive. Give us more, smash them to the ground, the crowd seems to scream behind the TV sets. The masses crave a spectacle and they get it, while the startup founders are wrestling not only with the investors, but also with the elusive next big thing they supposedly have in mind. A great spectacle, but is this the path to sustainable success? What defines real sustainable success for technology startups? Well, there's certainly no cookie-cutter recipe for this, but we will discuss some useful ingredients today. Welcome to Code Red, Technology, Madness, and the Future of Humanity, the monthly podcast for people who are pissed off about technology going rogue, want to do something about it, and wish to use it in a positive way to create a better future for humanity. My name is Ursula Isin. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Swan Vienna, and it's my pleasure to co-host this podcast with Silicon Valley-based tech luminary, futurist, innovator, inventor, writer, and philosopher, Chris Kalabukis. The polymathic pioneer is currently running 7 different businesses and is ready to launch number 8 and 9. Who better to talk to about entrepreneurship and the somewhat crazy startup world? Hi, Chris. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you doing today? I'm doing great. It sounds like I'm rushed off my feet, but I'm not. So it's all good.
7 businesses and you're still good?
Oh yeah. And in fact, I have to add 2 more because there's so many things I'm interested in. That's one of the reasons why I started calling myself the polymathic pioneer, because I do everything. I'm so interested in so many different things that I don't want to stop. And one of the things that AI has done for me is allowed me to be able to sort of 10x my output and
That's
be able to
great.
sort of
That's
10x the number of startups I'm working on.
Yeah, that's really great. And for our audience, if you also want to learn how to do that, go to aidaily.com. That's one of Chris's many, many ventures. And it's really, really useful. It's for free. You get a newsletter every day and learn the newest things about AI. Chris, you recently posted on X, startups are like bad relationships. They don't always last, but you learn something valuable from the experience. Do yourself a favor and start one, even if it fails. You'll never look at life the same way again. Well, that's for sure. But why, Chris? Why?
Well,
Why should we all at least once try to walk this bumpy road?
I'll tell you. I think people have
Please.
this idea that running a startup is so glamorous, right? That's like they look
Glamorous.
at people like
Glamorous.
Elon Musk, they look at people like Jeff Bezos, they look at people, all these tech luminaries who started off, they were sleeping under their cubes and they worked really hard and they launched these businesses, and they all look at them like like almost like gods. They're like, I want to aspire to be somebody like that. So what happens is that people don't understand that the reality behind startups is that 90% of them fail. In fact, 99% of them fail. And the only ones you're seeing up there that are super successful are the smallest few that actually got lucky enough to be able to align with product market fit and be connected in such a way to an audience that loves their product, right? And I'd like to sort of burst the startup bubble to make people think that this is such an amazing, glamorous life. It's not. It's a lot of hard work, and And not only that, it's kind of like any kind of test or challenge, right? It takes you through sort of a crucible of so many different things. And as a startup founder, you need to be able to do everything, right? I mean, there's people
Mm.
who are in their 9 to 5 jobs thinking to themselves, "Oh, I have this hobby and I think this hobby is great and people like my work in it. Maybe I could turn it into a business." But if they're, say, a product manager or a project manager or a technologist or a marketing person or whatever, in their 9 to 5, that's all they do. This little
Mm.
slice of what the business is doing. But when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a startup founder, you've got to do everything. And even if you have one or two partners in the business, you still have to do a lot more than you would do in a 9 to 5. So there's this glamorization of the startup life and the riches at the end of it. And for 99% of people, it's just not true. So I'd love for people to actually try it, right? Go into it
Mm.
and give it a test, like try it out. I mean, a lot of people can do it as side hustles to their 9 to 5. Try it out and see what it's like, and then get a deeper understanding of what it really is like to run a business, because running a business is not easy.
That's right. It's not fun. There are a lot of obstacles. And also, I think if you desire to create a better future for yourself, you only can start from reality,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not some glamorous movie life. So become clear about it, what it really means, and maybe it is for you. You also wrote on X, and now I would like to say, please, everyone, head over to X and follow Chris. There are a lot of gems in his feed. It's Think Future, I think,
Yep.
Chris,
That's
right?
my handle.
Yeah, the handle is Think Future. Yes, please do it. It's really fantastic. I like it a lot. And you also wrote, everyone should learn to solve problems because the only truly valuable skill is the ability to solve problems you've never seen before. I also think as long as there are problems to solve and wishes to fulfill, there are also new business ideas to be actualized, right?
Yeah.
Seen in this light, a business opportunity exists behind almost every problem encountered in everyday life. And technology is definitely a useful tool in this context, but it's a tool that's only as beautiful or as ugly as its user or its application. So we have to be careful. And I also think that startups should really um, aim to be useful, enriching, and contribute to people's awareness, growth, and empowerment rather than control, hinder, and harm them. So, my question to you, Chris, is, does it always have to be a problem we solve, or is it actually about needs in general?
Um, Problem solving, I think, is a skill that everyone needs to have. It's the base
Yeah,
skill that falls
sure.
out from everybody. So everyone says, "Oh, I'm a great technologist, or I'm a great marketer, or I'm a great project manager." The base of all of these skills is problem solving. Like, so you come across something that
Mm,
maybe you don't have the answer for right away, and you have to try and figure out how to solve the problem. So I think that's a base skill that everybody needs to have. And I don't think we promote it enough. I think we need to teach that in school. And
yes. Yes.
so having that problem solving base skill is important. But when it comes to startups, I think we have to sort things into wants and needs. And this is one of the things my dad used to say to me. He goes, "Why are you in computers? They're just a fad. You should go off and be a barber or a real estate agent, because everybody needs their haircut and everybody needs to live somewhere." And I'm like, wait a minute. But in reality, he kind of had a point, because if you think about it, what he was talking about was needs, right? So
Mm, mm,
people
mm,
need to do these things. People need to do these things. So I think the problem comes from the need. So if there's a need, absolute need to do something, it's kind of like the pain pill versus vitamin argument, right? Your startup should be a pain
mm,
pill, not a vitamin, because people have to take pain pills. They want to alleviate the pain. They want to solve the problem. Whereas if your
mm,
startup is a vitamin, it's like, oh, maybe I'd like it, maybe I wouldn't like it. So I kind of like it to haircuts and cupcakes, because everybody needs a haircut, right? So that's a need.
mm,
But a cupcake, you don't really need a cupcake. You kind of want a cupcake. But the interesting thing
mm,
about it,
mm.
and you were mentioning on Shark Tank or Lion's Den, Dragon's Den earlier, that startups can
The
both.
German version. The German is called Höhle der Löwen is Lions Den.
And the Canadian one is Dragon's Den. And interestingly enough, the guy who founded it, I think Robert is his name. He's actually the same age as me, and he was also born in Canada. So we're both
Oh,
like,
really?
except he's
The
like
Shark
incredibly
Tank one?
successful, but I'm not there yet.
You are too, as you are. So,
But the I think that a point I'm trying to make is that your startup has to address either a want or a need. And if it
mhm,
addresses a need, then it addresses a problem. And there's a better chance that you would be more successful, because if it's a need, then it's always going to be there. Whereas if your
mhm,
startup addresses a want, then you could still be successful. For example, I remember seeing on Shark Tank a while back cupcakes in a bell jar, or like, those, what do you call
mm,
them?
mhm,
The mason jars, right? So they had cupcake
amazing.
baked right into the mason jar, and they would just screw the top on, and they would mail it to you. And I thought, wow, is that a want or what? But they were actually pretty successful, and they were given money. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So the reality is that you just have to find a demand in the market. And as
Mhm.
long as you can
Yeah,
line up with the demand, whether it's a need or a want, there's a better chance for you to line up with a demand for a need, because that need will always be there. But there's
that's
nothing
right.
stopping you from,
Hmm.
you know, solving a want.
That's right. And we have really many different needs. In one of my future scenario processes, someone actually mentioned, mathematic professor mentioned the need for beauty.
Mm.
And this was a scenario process about the future of the internet. And I was startled that we could allow us to have the need for beauty, right? We talk about you have to solve a problem or something like that,
Yeah.
but we actually have this need for beauty, right? And people are very, very different. What you mentioned, like I have a strict policy for myself against painkillers. I will not take any painkiller, no matter what, and I don't eat cupcakes. So people are
But
different.
see, that's the other thing, is that a lot of startup founders also solve their
Mhm.
own problem, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So what
yeah.
they do is
Mm,
they see a problem, they have a problem,
mm,
and they go, I need to
mm.
solve that problem for myself. So they solve the problem
Yeah.
for themselves, and then they go, wait a minute, this is actually a pretty good solution. Maybe I can solve it for other people. And I think, I don't know if I told you before, the pop socket story, which is exactly that. So those pop sockets that go on the back of your
No,
phone? So
explain.
they go on the back of your phone and they pop out, and it's like
Mm,
a handle, right?
okay.
And
Mhm,
what happened was that this guy who invented them, he had a big problem with his earbuds. So remember the days when we had earbuds, and because pre-wireless, and he had trouble with finding his earbuds because he kept losing his earbuds. So what he did is
mm,
he invented this thing that's stuck on the back of your phone case and
mm,
sort of popped out, and he would wrap his earbuds around this thing. And he tried and he liked it and he thought it was cool. So he gave it to a bunch of his friends, and his friends looked at it, and he gave it to him for a couple of weeks. And he came back and asked for feedback. And they said to him, oh, this thing is great, but I actually use it more like a handle and a stand. So he pivoted
oh,
to turn it into a handle and a stand. And then he launched it, and it became a
mm,
huge success. Now you can find pop sockets everywhere. And these just these things that attach to the back of your phone that you can hold, or it turns your phone into a stand. So he solved a problem for himself, and then he got
mm.
feedback from customers that said, "Wait, this is not quite the problem I need
Thing we need.
solved. I need this
Yes,
problem
yes.
solved." He pivoted, and he turned it into a multi-billion-dollar business. So it's amazing how, sort of like, if you look at that, it's kind of like a crucible of everything that you need to do right in order for a startup to
Yeah.
succeed. It's like you need to solve your own problem because you are really close to that problem. I mean, a lot of startup founders, they go, I don't really know what to solve. I'm okay. I don't know what to solve. So they'll look out there for a problem that needs to be solved. And a lot of times they can't solve the problem because they can't internalize the problem as their own. They solve their own
Mm.
problem, and then they build it, they set it out for feedback, and then they pivot to what the market wants as opposed to what they want. So it was a perfect example of how startups should work. Now, it wouldn't necessarily work. He was one of the lucky ones that actually got through, but
Mm.
it's a great case study of how these things work when they work.
Yes, and there's another great example of first solve your own problem, Airbnb,
Yeah,
right? And for me, it's
exactly.
also an example for the most abstruse ideas might turn out just great. Those who are only chasing the next big thing can easily overlook unusual ideas. But in fact, the most successful companies often emerge from downright abstruse suggestions. And I think the example Airbnb, who would have thought an online platform for air mattress rentals would become a billion-dollar
Yeah,
business?
exactly.
Right.
No, but
And
see,
they had
that's
the
the
problem
interesting
themselves.
thing about services like that. It's kind of like Uber and all these other things, is that it taps into our propensity to not want to waste, right? Because you have
Mm.
empty space. You have a car sitting there. You have a room that's empty, or is just a guest room that's always a guest room. And we see these empty spaces and we go, is there any way I can do something with that? So
Mm.
you have things like
Yes.
tool rental, and you have little libraries, and then all sorts of people sort of lending out their space. I mean, there's a company here, you probably have something like that there as well, that rents out your garage. So if I
Mm.
instead of going to public storage, you can put your stuff in somebody's garage if they have free space in their garage. So those kind of startups are great. I mean, they're marketplaces, which is of course another huge challenge if you decide to do a marketplace startup. Those are huge challenges in and of themselves, but
Mm.
they work because all of these elements are coming together. You have a demand, you have a supply, and you're able to magically put them together.
Mm. That's right. And I think, but also important is, you also said that on X, focus on becoming one of a kind instead of trying to be part of the crowd. Unique is the new normal. Can you? mm, So we have to stand out, right? And how can we do
Well,
that?
you can stand out, but you can't stand out too far. That's the problem.
Mm. Ah,
Well, it's kind of
there's a
like
catch.
so you're a marketing background. You read the 22 Mutable Laws of Marketing or Branding, Reese and Trout, classic marketing book. And basically, what they say is that do not stay in a market where you have a lot of competitors. Create your own
Mm.
market. Do something completely new
Mm.
and different. So instead of saying I'm, say, like your Coca Cola, and you've got like a million different other beverage companies. What makes you different from everybody else? Create your
Mm.
own market in a completely different space, and then dominate that market as opposed to being in the same market with somebody else. And then on the uniqueness front, that's the key, is to be unique enough so that you stand out, but not too far out. Because if you're too far out, you're outside of the boundaries of what people find acceptable. And when you're outside of the boundaries of what people find acceptable, a lot of times, in fact, even the platforms might even shut you down if you do something that's a little too out there. So you need to be
Mm. Mm.
unique and different, and but at the same time, be not be too unique and different, because if you do that, then you're out of bounds. So you've got to find that sweet spot between not being the same as everybody else and
Mm.
also not being too far out. But then I think the thing that people really forget, and this is something that's just nearly recently come to me, is that we all have tons of knowledge in our heads through our personal
That's
experience.
right. Mm.
And a lot of times we know so much that we've forgotten things that other people find surprising. So it's difficult for
That's
us to
right.
go back into
Mm.
our own history and go, what are they going to find interesting? Because I'm not find this interesting at all, because I've done it a million times. So I don't think it's interesting at all. But if I put it out there, somebody might go, wow, this is the most
Absolutely.
interesting thing I've read, because they don't know something that you've probably forgotten about. So digging into your own personal story and your own personal environment and your own path through life and presenting that path, that makes you different from everybody else. The thing that makes you different from everybody else is that you are a unique human, and you've had unique
Mm.
experiences that nobody else has ever had. And putting that out there makes you unique enough. So I think a lot of people aren't authentic enough with themselves on social media and present themselves as, this is the kind of person I am. And a lot of the times, I think they do that because of the dance to the machines that we've talked about before, is that they go,
Mm.
well, I need to be known for X, this specific thing.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I'm gonna not talk about anything other than this specific thing, so that everybody knows I'm interested in this specific. I'm the person to go to for this specific thing. But then you don't get the full slice of a human being. You only get this little specific thing, and just getting the little specific thing says that you're not a human, and it doesn't make you unique, because you'll do the same thing that
Right.
everybody else is. So presenting yourself as a full human, a full authentic human on social media, I think is super important, and that's the piece that makes you unique.
Absolutely. But circling back to things that went too far to be acceptable, the added value of great inventions is often not immediately apparent to others. As Henry Ford once aptly put it, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Hmm.
So, what do you think about that? Like the big inventions. Also, people didn't think they need a light bulb, they had candles, right?
Yep.
So, this is really too far, seems to be too far for the imagination. Well, what do you think about these kinds of inventions? Would maybe that's just not the startup world. Maybe that's another kind of invention.
Well, I think the startups need to be in that space, but they need to be a little bit out of that space. And it's kind of like Steve Jobs said the same thing. Customers don't really know what they want. Customers don't really
Mm,
know what they want. But in your creation of the new product that you're going to be launching, the customer's input needs to inform what you're doing. It's kind of like what I was saying before, where the past shouldn't enforce your future. It should just guide your future. So customer
mm,
input, customer feedback, what customers want should just be a piece of what you need to use in order to build your full product. So
mm,
don't listen to your customers. Don't just listen to your customers. Do other things as well. Like go out there and find out what else there is. Look at the problem that you need to solve. Talk to your customers. There's a whole raft of inputs into this new product that you're creating. And your customer feedback might be a big piece of it, it might be a small piece of it. And I think it goes
mm,
back to what you were saying about business model, right? Because the thing about business model is that you're trying to build a viable business where somebody will pay you money for the thing that you're creating. So if someone's going to
mm,
pay you money for the thing that you're creating, then it has to provide value to the customer.
mm,
And you have to determine what will provide value to the customer before you have the business model. But a lot of times, the most innovative businesses don't do that at all. They just throw something out there, not even thinking about business model. And then eventually a business model kind of emerges from the usage of the customers. I mean, Twitter's a really good example of that. When they first put it out there, nobody knew what to use it for. In fact, I remember using it in 2007 when it first came out, and I was tweeting to a friend of mine. I said, "What do we use this for?" I was like, "Well, let's try using it for email, right? Because it'll force us to be brief because it's only 160 characters, right?" For the longest time, it didn't have a business model and it was supported by investment. But then eventually, a business model sort of bubbled out from the use of the product. So I'd love to see more products like that where we don't focus on how does this thing going to make money like on day one. We focus on let's do something that's useful and fills a gap in the market and people enjoy using and they get something out of it. And then somehow over the course of time, some business model sort of emanates out of it. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yes. Yes, and you were mentioning something we were discussing before the show, just to fill our listeners and our audience in. You said in our very first Code Red episode, if you start with what's the business model, you are already restricting yourself into a tiny little box saying, we gotta make sure we make money with this before we even do anything about it.
right.
And I thought that's really to the point. Many people don't start, they think about a revenue model. I also want to clarify that one. Your business model is not the same as your revenue model. There are many more things in the business model than in the revenue model, but people usually think of the revenue model and then they restrict themselves. They cannot think out of the box or just do something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just let's do it. Let's get started and we will see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Some of this will fail, of course it will fail. um,
Well, that's why
and this also
I'm a huge proponent of testing a business because
yeah,
nowadays it used to be
test it.
incredibly difficult to do a business. Incredibly difficult. I mean, there was
Mhm.
so much work you had to do and marketing and this and this and this and this. And now you can flip on a business in minutes. It could take you days to do something and hours and days to do something it took you weeks and months to do. So even just something as simple as testing demand, like putting up a
Yes.
web page which says, "Hey,
Mm,
here's a new gizmo I'm thinking
mm,
about. I'm selling. How many people are
mm.
interested in it?" And then driving interest and seeing how many people would sign up for your email list. I mean, it's very little cost, but at least you'll be able to get some idea as to if there's a demand for this thing that you're trying to come up with. And it's never been easier to do something like that. It's never been cheaper. It's never been quicker to just test a business idea to see if it's going to go anywhere. Now, this isn't going to work for the things that require a lot of complex investment, like medical devices or anything like that. But if you're just doing, say, I don't know, a business that sells information on tiny homes or something like that, you can easily put something up there and go, here's my tiny home handbook. It's 180 pages, etc. So there are ways. It's never been easier to do something like that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really pushing is that people who are interested or have the most marginal interest in doing a startup, they should just go ahead and do it. I mean, it's not that hard to test an idea to see if it will fly, and then if it flies, then you can move it into the next stage and do more on it.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to my next point. I call it courage to fail and the crab mentality of our society. Crab with B. With B, crab with B. I'll
I don't know.
explain.
I like crap with a P better, but that's okay.
I'll explain. I'll explain. You never fail unless you give up trying is a nice quote attributed to Albert Einstein. And there are indeed countries and cultures which embrace a healthy culture of failure. It is normal to make mistakes along the way because ahead is where no one else knows their way around yet. And as Einstein also put it, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. But to be honest, and I know you originally also from Europe, to be honest, in Austria and Germany, it's not quite so simple. In my home markets, the so called crab mentality is widespread. What does it mean? When catching crabs, fishermen do not have to cover the catching basket because every crab that courageously sticks its head out of the basket is immediately pulled down again by the others. Um, Giving others credit for success is not very common in this mentality. Obstacles emerge when a single crab ventures into uncharted waters, and they are thrown at us by authorities, fellow campaigners, friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who suddenly feel called upon to offer unsolicited, constructive criticism. The most absurd thing I've ever heard personally in this context was, you know what, your enthusiasm will not take you very far. So sorry. I'm sorry, but that's just
That's a
absurd.
good one.
That's really a good one. So, but anyone who is put off by these obstacles missed the point of the adventure, right, Chris?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the I don't think we're designed to be cogs in a machine or to be in a corporate infrastructure where we just do this little tiny slice of things. I think we were designed to
Mm,
be much bigger than that, much fuller than that, because
I
our
agree.
brains are designed
Mm,
to do more than just one thing. And then that's why I think about AI and how people say, oh, AI is going to take your job. And I say, well, if AI takes your job, then there's obviously not a job for a human being to do. It's a job for an AI to do because you should be
yes.
doing better things. You should be doing greater things. And we've been designed, we can do these things. We have the ability to do these things. And a lot of times we fall back and go, well, yeah, I don't want to do these things. But we have the capability of doing these things. We have the capability of dreaming. We have the capability to be ambitious. And when we have these kind of barriers trying to knock us back down, we shouldn't just fall back. We should go, how do I get around this? How can I do this better? How can I fulfill my dream or at least get a bit closer to it? And I think as human beings, we really need to try and strive to build those dreams that we're looking for. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people they have a side hustle, right? They have their 9 to 5 job, which makes their money. And then they have a bunch of businesses on the side, or even one or two businesses, which is their passion, what they're really interested in doing. So wouldn't it be great if the tables were flipped and they spent most of their time on their passion project as opposed to working for money? And eventually for some people that could be the case, but you'll never know unless you give it a try, unless you give it a shot. And when you get these negative voices, you're always going to get negative voices. And I think there's a Japanese proverb about the nail that sticks up too far gets hammered down, right? So
Right.
you do got, and the thing is that when you're creating a startup, when you're doing something brand new, you're definitely going to get that sort of thing because people love the status quo. They love things being in a steady state. But hey, newsflash, life is not a steady state. We have not been decided to be in a steady state. And I think one of my other quotes was that the form of life on this planet is actually chaos. This order that
Mm.
we've impressed on top of it is the thing that's temporary. It's not the thing that's permanent. Chaos is the permanent way of 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 nature, of earth, of humanity. And we're just keeping it down. So you should embrace some of the chaos and go do a startups, try something new. Who knows what you could create? I mean, think of how many people's lives you could improve by putting out a product that solves your problem. I mean, it's just there's just so much upside to it. And yes, there are setbacks, there are barriers, there are people who are going to say, "Don't do this. This is not a good idea." But we're greater than that. I think we can rise to the occasion and really think about building our dreams.
That's right. You also said on X, a lot of X quotes today. And I really like that. Success is not a straight line, it's a jagged mountaineering path with lots of ups and downs. Those who don't give up eventually make it to the top. As an Austrian, I of course relate to this metaphor. And I really think it's the success does not lie in a distant future, but in the passion and curiosity with which we approach everything in the here and now. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that the only thing that we can do is affect our future, our present and our
Mm.
future. And we can't go back to the past and go, oh, redo that. I mean, we can go back and spend a lot of time thinking about it, but we can't redo that. So we have to understand that we're at the rudder of our life, right? And we're the ones who can take that rudder and turn it the way we want it to turn. And if we don't turn it the way we want it to turn, then someone else is going to step in there and turn it for us.
For us.
And it may be
Exactly.
going down the wrong river. We're like, wait a second, that's the wrong river. I want to go down this fork, not that fork. And unless you're at the tiller, unless you're grabbing that tiller and you're taking it down the river that you want to go down, then you're going to be going in the wrong direction. So we absolutely need to take command of our lives and go in the direction we want to. Even if it gives us a little bit of pain and suffering at the beginning, we still need to
Mm.
be consistent to get through this. And I think there've been studies on this is that consistency and persistence is the thing that trumps talent every time. Because eventually talented people will go, "Oh, this is so
That's
easy for
right.
me. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna have a problem with it." So they get lazy. Whereas if you're persistent and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, then eventually you may get to where you need to go.
Yes, entrepreneurship is not easy, nor will it be, but we can still try to enjoy the ride together.
Absolutely.
President John F. Kennedy said in his 1962 moon speech, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." So thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. This has
Again,
been great.
it was a pleasure as always, and I really, really appreciate it. And of course, I appreciate each and every one of you, our great audience. Thank you very much for listening to or watching Code Red, Technology Madness and the Future of Humanity. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Do you know 3 people who would also enjoy the content? Then share it with them. All episodes are publicly available and free of charge. You're more a reader than a listener? Then feel free to subscribe to the written Code Red columns on Code Red by redswan.substack.com. In any case, let me thank you for taking the time and for your bravery to change the world by starting with yourself. Wherever you are, I wish you a good day or a good night, and in any case, a good life. See you next time.